Welcome to Macro Magic. I'm Sherry Damaris, and with me today is Neal Barnard. He's an adjunct professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C., and author of Your Body in Balance, The New Science of Food, Hormones, and Health, which is a wonderful book. Dr. Barnard had led numerous research studies, including a groundbreaking study funded by the NIH that paved the way for weaving type 2 diabetes as a potentially reversible condition. And this is really important for our viewers to realize that if you do have type 2 diabetes, you can learn so much more about it and possibly look at improving your condition and your health through diet. In his latest study, the research team found a simple diet plan that knocks out menopausal hot flashes for many women. So we wanted to talk about two topics today, diabetes and menopause, and how soy is coming into play in helping women with menopausal symptoms. Dr. Barnard has authored over 100 scientific publications, 20 books for medical and lay readers, and is the editor-in-chief of Nutrition Guide for Clinicians, a textbook made available to all U.S. medical students. And I'm so excited you've done that, Neal. We were on recently with Dr. Colin Campbell, and he said the number one thing is to educate the medical world through the medical schools and how important that really is at this point in time. So today I'm excited to talk about tackling hormone problems, specifically as it relates to diabetes and menopausal symptoms. So welcome. So nice to have you.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. It's great to be with you.
And I know that we were up there recently filming in DC an interview with you for our Spirit of Rice documentary, and you were so excited about a recent study you found linking the amount of soy women were eating to an improvement in their health, in particular with their menopausal symptoms. Did you want to share some of that information with us?
Yes, absolutely. So many women, when they reach 50, 52, something like that, menopausal symptoms can kick in. Now, for many, they sail through it fine, but some don't, and some have. The most disturbing part is these hot flashes where you're sitting in a board meeting, it's 2 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden it feels like the room is 150 degrees and you break out in a sweat and your clothes are drenched. And after a minute or two, it goes away, but then you get chills, and people around the room notice that you look like a strawberry suddenly, and it can happen 4 or 5 times a day or even more. And then at night it can happen, and it just wakes you up hour after hour. And so women don't get a good night's sleep, and they really feel terrible. Our research was inspired by an observation, and that's that this experience is very different in different countries depending on what they're eating. And it started in Japan. Back in the 1980s, researchers noticed that this really didn't happen in Japan very much, although it was pretty common in the United States. And so researchers thought, well, all right, it's probably the soybeans, because soybeans contain something called isoflavones that have become famous because they are a cancer preventive, but they also are sort of a hot flash medicine. However, the next thing that occurred was that as Japan's diet started to westernize and rice disappeared from their diet and was replaced by KFC, burgers, and fast food from the West, and cheese and dairy products, even though soy was still part of the diet, hot flashes came in a big way. So the bottom line is, soy might be helpful, but the overall diet matters too, and a plant-based diet seems to help. So we did a clinical trial where we brought in women who had bad hot flashes. On average, they're having about 6 of them every day, and half of them went on a diet that was completely plant-based, plus a half a cup of soybeans every day. And this combination knocked out the moderate to severe hot flashes by 84%. And about 60% of the women just didn't have any more of these troubling hot flashes at all. I mean, it was just a total cure related to the moderate and severe hot flashes. And other things got better. Physical symptoms got better, psychosocial, in other words, mood got better, sexual symptoms improved. All of these things were getting better from this really simple diet change. And the reason I think this is so important is what's the treatment that doctors recommend? They'll tell a woman, well, why don't you take hormones? And so she picks up the prescription and she goes to the pharmacy and they give her an information sheet saying this medicine will increase your risk of cancer, and increase your risk of stroke, and increase your risk of dementia. And you think, wait a minute, isn't there some safer way? And anyway, bottom line, the answer is there is a much safer way. We have found it, and it's a great thing for women to put to use and for doctors to recommend as well.
And I love the fact that you're backing it up with research now. So for many years, when I cooked for people with breast problems or breast cancer, they would tell me that they didn't want tofu in the menu, they didn't want to learn how to cook tofu, they didn't want to learn how to cook these soy products, and they were very scared of them. So I think this information is groundbreaking, and it's going to open up a whole new world to many, many people in terms of their understanding about soy and how it works in the body.
Well, there was really a big misunderstanding that you could kind of see where it came from. It was back in the 1930s, people started teasing out what's in the soybean. Mm-hmm. And soybeans have, as I mentioned, isoflavones. And their chemical terms are genistein, daidzein, glycetine, and so forth. But what got people's attention was that in the test tube, these compounds from soy, these natural compounds, will attach to estrogen receptors. And that frightened people because we knew that estradiol, an estrogen, will attach to estrogen receptors, and it causes cancer to propagate. It makes cancer more likely to occur, and if a woman has cancer, that estradiol will cause the cancer to progress. So if isoflavones attach to these receptors too, that means they're trouble. And so for decades, GI will cause breast cancer, and sometimes their oncologists would say, now that you've been diagnosed with cancer, get away from soy. But Sherry, here's what happened. Researchers first started studying women who ate a lot of soy and women who didn't eat a lot of soy. For example, an Asian American woman who comes from a tradition where tofu is part of the daily diet, and maybe soy milk and tempeh and miso and so forth. And it turned out that within that population, those who continued to eat a lot of soy had about 30% less risk of developing breast cancer compared to women who were similar in other respects, but didn't eat soy. And this was a consistent finding. The soy eaters didn't have more cancer, they had less. And then there were 5 big studies of women who had breast cancer in the past. They were treated for it. And it turned out that those who ate the most soy were most likely to survive their cancer. The risk of dying of their cancer was cut by maybe 25 or 30%. So the question was, wait a minute, soy is somehow reducing cancer risk. It's somehow reducing the likelihood of succumbing to a cancer if you had it already. How could that be? All right, it's not actually so mysterious. There are 2 different kinds of estrogen receptors, alpha and beta. The alpha receptor, think of it as like a gas pedal. It makes things grow. It causes cancer to progress. That's where estradiol attaches. It grabs onto that estrogen receptor. It's like stepping on the gas. Beta receptor, think of it as the brake. That's where the soy isoflavones attach. It's completely different. And so soy has the opposite effect. We didn't know that maybe a couple of decades ago, but we know it now. So unfortunately, mythology lives on, and there are still some kind of well-meaning but ill-informed oncologists or internet writers or others who say, I don't know, I wouldn't have soy if I were you because I heard it's a problem. The studies in human beings are very, very consistent that soy reduces cancer risk. It reduces the likelihood of dying of cancer. And it does attach to beta receptors, not alpha. It seems to be a good thing. It's optional. You don't have to have it, but it reduces cancer risk for women and for men, and can be used to knock out soybeans. Soybeans can be used to knock out menopausal hot flashes.
And also, when you say it's good for men, that's really important too, as well as women maybe having menstrual problems or, fertility issues or any sort of hormonal problem, it might be beneficial more than we think, right?
Yeah, there are actually three parts to the diet, and they all play a role. The first is to get away from animal products. Avoid them completely. So you're eating grains, brown rice, lots of other barley and millet and many, many, many others. The bean group. Our grandparents knew what beans were, but we've kind of forgotten about them nowadays. And it's not just soybeans, but black beans and pinto beans and so many kinds, and lentils. The vegetable group, the broad range of vegetables, and the fruit group. They're all part of it. And why does that matter? A couple of reasons. One is that when you have a diet that's high in fiber and low in fat, it helps to get estrogen levels in balance. For a woman at menopause, that's really important. But it's equally important for a woman at the other end of her reproductive life. She's 20 years old and she's got cramps that are driving her crazy, or she's got endometriosis or fertility issues because her hormones are out of balance. A plant-based diet provides fiber and very, very little fat, and that helps get the estrogens balanced. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, keep oils really low. So many people think they got to slather oil on everything. That messes up your digestive bacteria, your gut microbiome, and that will cause other estrogen-related problems. And the third part is to use soybeans if you want to. I don't know that they're so important for women who are dealing with menstrual pain, but they are a big thing for women at the time of menopause. So it's a good thing.
And I love, love, love your book, Body in Balance, where you explain all these issues, thyroid, problem, all the issues that many, many people are wrestling with. And it's just a wonderful resource. And I'm hoping, this show is so short, so I'm hoping to get as much information from you as I can today. We're going to transition into the diabetes topic, because I know you've worked so much with diabetes, and you're giving so many people hope that especially if they have type 2 diabetes, they can start reversing some of their symptoms. Do you want to explain a little bit about how hormones play a part in diabetes as well?
Yeah, exactly. And the hormone here is probably the most famous hormone of all, and that's insulin. It's made in your pancreas, and it goes to the cells of your body, and it opens the cell up to allow glucose to come into the cell. That's a natural sugar that gives your cell power. And that's insulin. That's the whole reason you got insulin, is to get the glucose into your cells so that you can run and walk and think and do all the things your cells want to do. And I got to tell you, Sherry, I grew up in North Dakota, and my dad started out life as in the cattle business, but he didn't like that business very much, and he left it and went to medical school, and he spent his whole life treating diabetes in Europe. But I never once heard him say that anybody ever really got better. I cured a case of diabetes today. It never really happened. And we had this really naive view of diabetes at that time, which was, for some reason, your insulin isn't working very well. We don't really know why, but maybe you have to just inject more insulin and that'll do the job. We've made a discovery that's really, really important. And that is, if you could look inside your cells with a powerful scanner, we call it magnetic resonance spectroscopy, you see something that my father never heard about, because they didn't have this technology back then. It's the buildup of microscopic fat particles inside the muscle cells. They're called intramyocellular lipid, but all it means is fat inside the muscle cells. That's the reason insulin isn't working. So the patient comes into the clinic, say, for whatever reason, if I eat bread or I eat an apple or anything nowadays, my blood sugar goes sky high. And the doctor says, yeah, I guess your insulin isn't working. We'll have to inject a whole bunch more into you. Stop. If you could look into that man's body, you would see the reason for it. His muscle cells are filled with little fat particles, and that's stopping the insulin from working. So anything he eats will make his blood sugar rise, because the sugar can't get into the cell. So what our team did was the logical thing. We brought in people who had type 2 diabetes. We took the animal products out of their diet. That means there isn't any animal fat anymore. We also kept oils really, really low. And that meant there wasn't very much of any kind of fat. And the fat starts dissipating from their muscle cells. It starts going away. And you can see that if you were to scan them with MR spectroscopy, you see the fat going away. But what the patient notices is that their blood sugar comes down and down and down. And their doctor says, I don't know why, but you don't need so much insulin anymore. And eventually the doctor might say, I'm going to stop your insulin injections completely. And the patient can't believe it. It's as if the disease process is going backwards. But it's not magic. All that happens is that you're getting the fat out of the cell. The insulin hormone can now do what it was supposed to do, which is to escort the sugar in the cell. It could never do that as long as there was all that fat in the diet. So the diet change brought us something we had never seen before. And that's people being able to say goodbye to diabetes and goodbye to all the problems it causes, like lost vision, amputations, kidney damage, and heart attacks. All of those things that were in the future of these people are now things that they can hold beyond arm's length because we found the answer to it. We found how to address it.
And that is groundbreaking, Neal. That is so helpful for so many millions of people here in the United States who are suffering from diabetes. And I'm hoping that you're including all that information in the medical literature that you provide to medical students each year, because I think that our thinking is a little bit off in terms of the disease and what's needed. And I know you've lectured so many times around the world and on the cruise, and you continue to write more books and discuss more about this. And you gave a wonderful PowerPoint presentation to a group of people that I share lectures with on Thursday night. And it really opened a lot of eyes to understand what is really going on in the body with diabetes.
You know, I want to say a little bit of praise even for the organized medical world. We're often kind of quick to criticize our colleagues for not thinking in this way. But the fact of the matter is, when our studies were being planned, the U.S. government, the National Institutes of Health, funded our research. That was great, and the research has gone on for a long period of time. And after our NIH trial was completed, the American Diabetes Association was the first to publish it. 2006 in their premier flagship journal, Diabetes Care. So it's not as if the word hasn't gotten out. And major journals have covered all of this. And in fact, we were invited to go speak at the American Diabetes Association annual convention, their scientific sessions. And so there has been a lot of interest in this approach. But I think the problem that I'm seeing is there's a lot of noise out there. There are all kinds of fad diets. And frankly, there's an overemphasis on the latest medication that comes out. And so people may not be thinking about what caused the diabetes and how can you reverse it naturally? How can you deal with this condition in a more appropriate way than just adding more and more medications? So the message has gotten out there, and a lot of doctors are using it nowadays. And the problem is, I think there's a lot of competition for people's attention. That said, every person who goes to the doctor's office and they say to a doctor, I read this book, or I saw Dr. Barnard's TEDx talk on diabetes, or something like that, and they adopted this approach, they are in turn educating doctors too. And so we've seen so much enthusiasm for this approach from so many doctors nowadays that the world is changing in a really good way. I'm happy to say.
That's great. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to see a commercial from you about what we've been discussing, and then we're going to come back and talk to you more about hormones.
Some of the most troubling health problems have a surprising solution. Weight gain, infertility, diabetes, thyroid disorders, and many other health issues are related to the foods we eat. And in many of these cases, foods are changing our hormones, making us feel great or terrible, vigorous or lethargic, pain-free or miserable. And the key is this: we can take charge of our hormones and the problems they cause by the food choices we make every day.
I didn't make the connection between diet and health until I was 27 and got very ill. I had incredible pain. I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis and ovarian cysts and uterine cysts. They felt very strongly that I needed a hysterectomy because I was too high risk for endometrial cancer. After I made the change to a whole food plant-based diet, I felt incredible. I lost 55 pounds. I had more energy. I started to get new hair growth at 27, which is incredible. My cholesterol came down to a healthy level. My blood pressure came down. Everything changed. It's like I was walking around sick and I didn't even know it because you get so used to it. Hi, I'm Catherine. I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis and many infertility problems, but today I have 3 beautiful children.
My name is Michael Cowan. I'm a neurosurgeon in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've had hypothyroidism for about 4 or 5 years. I decided to make some dietary changes in an effort to treat this because it was recommended at that time that I start medication. Within 2 weeks of starting a whole food plant-based diet, I noticed significant changes in my energy level. Within a month or 2 after that, felt like I'd never felt before.
Hi, my name is Wendy. I suffered from hyperthyroidism unknowingly for many years. I discovered a plant-based diet, and within 6 weeks, my blood work and my thyroid numbers were back to normal.
Hi, I'm Allison. I struggled with PCOS and infertility for years. Then I switched to a plant-based diet, and I now have a beautiful 3-year-old girl.
Our hormones direct how our bodies work. They turn our metabolism up or down. They alter our moods. They control reproductive function. They can even affect how we store body fat. And some of the most serious problems we face, obesity, diabetes, even some types of cancer, are related to foods that are causing our hormones to go haywire. Fortunately, simple diet changes can help. My goal is to give new hope to people who are struggling with health issues, to give you the practical tips and resources to get started, including hormone balancing recipes.
Welcome back. I'm with Neal Barnard, and we are talking about his book about hormones, and we discussed his recent studies on soy and how they're actually beneficial for menopausal symptoms, and also diabetes and what is actually going on in the body when someone gets especially type 2 diabetes. So Neal, you mentioned a plant-based diet. What do you see as roadblocks maybe to people making this transition, especially when they're traveling or new to the diet? What have you seen in your clinic? Now, I know down in Washington, a person, and many of my students have talked about searching you out, that you can sign up for a doctor through your PCRM, and you get a doctor to follow you and help you transition to a plant-based diet, but also look at your cooking as well as your medical history. And we all want to treat the person as a whole, and so we look at their whole lifestyle. So what have you been finding in terms of encouraging these people to transition to a plant-based diet?
Right, yeah, very important. You're right. At the Barnard Medical Center, we see people in person, but we also see them through telemedicine. And it's a nonprofit medical practice that's designed specifically to help people to get to the bottom of their issues. And food is front and center in just about every case. And everybody wants to get healthier. Everybody wants to conquer their diabetes or their menopausal symptoms or their PCOS or the thyroid conditions or whatever. But they may start a diet, but then there'll be some little bump in the road. For example, it's a family reunion, and they're going over to their cousin's house, and they know there's not going to be a single thing that's healthy there to eat. What can I do in that situation? Or I'm going to travel for a wedding. What do I do there? I have family members who don't support me. So we address these in a couple of ways. The first thing is, when a person comes in, they say, all right, I want to change my diet, but I don't know how. We break it into 2 steps. Step 1 is 7 days. We'll say to the patient, don't change your diet at all this week. But for the next 7 days, your assignment is to take a piece of paper and make a list of foods that you would eat if you were following a totally vegan diet, no animal products at all. And they say, that's all I got to do? Yep, that's it. You got to make a list. Try these foods to make sure you like them, but then put them on your list. Okay, so the patient starts the list. I like oatmeal with cinnamon and raisins, and if I have cornflakes with cow's milk, I guess I'll substitute almond milk or something like that. And for lunch, instead of a hamburger, maybe I could try, but if it's any good, so I've got 7 days, I better try it. And then for dinner, maybe they'll have pizza without the cheese. Or they'll go to a Chinese restaurant and have rice and tofu, which they never had before. Okay, so they come back a week later. They got a pretty good list. Very good. They did great on their first step. Now, the second step is to take 3 weeks and do it all vegan all the time for 3 weeks. And the patient says, well, that's easy. I can do anything for 3 weeks, and I already got my list together, so no problem. So they're now doing a completely plant-based diet. And after 21 days, 2 things will have happened. Physically, they feel a lot healthier. Their blood sugar is coming down. Their menstrual symptoms are getting better. Their menopausal symptoms are getting better. Their mood is better. But apart from these physical changes, their attitudes about foods are changing. They don't really miss chicken wings and greasy cheese and stuff anymore, which is surprising to them. And they're discovering new foods and new products and new restaurants and new movies and all kinds of stuff. And so they get really excited and they want to continue. Okay, and then you just have to help the patient to discuss issues that come up. So they'll say, well, we're traveling. What can I do? And for a person traveling, we always say 2 words: think international. An Italian restaurant, they're going to have pasta e fagioli or spaghetti marinara. Okay, Mexican restaurant, they got beans, they got rice, they got veggie fajitas. Chinese, rice, vegetables, tofu. Japanese, I can go to a sushi bar. I get miso soup and the cucumber roll, the asparagus roll. So think international helps a lot. Doesn't mean that Taco Bell is the pinnacle of culinary art, but even they've got something for you. And then when it comes to family events, it's good to plan ahead and maybe bring a dish, but bring extra because everybody else is going to eat yours. So we think these things through in advance, and pretty soon people get over any issues, and they discover the foods are delicious, even more varied and interesting than the pork chop or whatever they used to eat, and they feel so great that they want to keep going. If they goof up, okay, this is real life, but you just get back on and you keep going.
I love it. I love your explanations. They're so easy to understand. That's what I love about your teachings. How can people reach you and then hear about your latest books? And then also, I'm real curious to learn a little bit more about your telemedicine.
They can reach us if you go to our website, pcrm.org, that stands for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, pcrm.org. You'll find lots of things there. You'll see information about my book, about our research studies. You'll see testimonials of people who have done this, but you'll also see events, many of which are free. Go to PC/events. We have events in English, in Spanish. We have events in India. We have events in China. We have all kinds of stuff. Please have a look. So many of them are free, and you'll really, really enjoy it. Your Body in Balance it's there. It's also on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and wherever there are books. And my only request is that if a person picks up a copy of Your Body in Balance, tell somebody else about what you know. Because there's a lot of noise out there. We really need to help get this word out for a person who thought diabetes could never go away, or menopausal symptoms can be dealt with, but with dangerous drugs, or menstrual cramps can never get better, or da-da-da-da-da. Let's put the power of healing to work.
And then tell me a little bit about the telemedicine and how it works. If I'm a client who's new and interested in changing my doctor, how do I sign up and where do I find you? You mentioned a little bit before about the website, but what is the process once I sign up?
The website is barnardmedical.org. barnardmedical.org. That leads you to the Barnard Medical Center. And we have telemedicine, and some people do it because they want a new doctor. Some people do it because they like their current doctor, but they want an extra consultation, either with a physician or with a registered dietitian. And we do both. So we're very happy to work with whoever your doctor is right now. Your doctor might do a great job with blood tests and medications, and you want to turn to us for the diet side of it. We do all of those things. We have to be licensed state by state by state. So we cover maybe about a third of the United States, but mostly all the big states we're covered by them. And so we have dietitians and we have physicians who can help you. You'll see it at barnardmedical.org.
Now, if I'm really tackling a severe illness, is it someone I can add to my team of practitioners, and will they work with my other doctors?
It's really, really important for us to always be working as a team. And sometimes I have to say the people who benefit the most are not just the patient, but it's their previous doctor who says, I didn't know you could really get better this fast. So we work together as a team, and we make sure that nobody gets left behind.
Oh, that's great. And Neal, I'm so excited to always work with you. What is on the horizon? What are some of the projects that are coming up at PCRM, or maybe some new books that you're thinking about writing?
There are lots of cool things. We're doing some more research studies. We're starting a new study on endometriosis, which is a very common but painful condition that young women will deal with. It's hormone driven. We're going to look at the effects of diet on that. And we also have some interesting materials for doctors. There is a webpage that we now have called foodinstructions.org. Here's what it is. The doctor says to the patient, thank you for coming in today for your diabetes appointment or whatever. Now, to get some more information about food, we don't have a dietitian here, but go to foodinstructions.org and you'll see little short, cute videos that help the patient to optimize their diet. It's a new thing that we've got, and doctors are building it into their electronic medical record so that when the patient gets their bill and their next appointment, they also get a request to go to foodinstructions.org to learn what their next steps can be.
Oh, that is so wonderful, so creative. I'm so happy you're doing that. Neal, we're going to wrap up. I so enjoyed having you on the show. Keep up the great work. I know how hard you're working and how much a difference you're making in the world. And we look forward to having you again back on the show.
Well, thank you, Sherry, and thanks for all the fantastic work that you've been doing. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, and make sure to eat your plants and cook well. And join us for another episode of Macro Magic.